Hi there. Today I want to talk about how to diffuse burnout and get back to being energized, and how we can start to fill up our creative well and really look at preventive care before we get to the point of burnout. And so, by learning how we can dissolve our onset feelings of frustration and burnout, we can start to alchemize that energy when we start to see the signs. And it's a way that we can start to replenish ourselves back to that natural state of being as creators. So when we have fatigue and irritability, that takes time that compounds in the body. And when we dismiss those signs of being burnt out, fatigued, irritable, frustrated, what we're doing is we're missing those signs that our body's trying to tell us to ease back. And it's an easy trap that we can fall into and go into the burnout trap. So we get so used to hustling and we get so used to our day-to-day grind and our routines that it's really easy for us to avoid giving attention to those parts of us that are aching. And when we start to feel blocked, there's easy methods to shake off that energy and get back into the groove and the flow of the creative state. But over time, when we don't take care of those feelings that are coming within and we're too focused and too narrow in our thinking, we're going to eventually hit those high levels of exhaustion. And when those high levels of exhaustion hit, it can take way too long for us to bounce back and bounce out of that. And it becomes really hard to pinpoint the specific areas that actually need resolution because everything is just exhausted. So we want to break out of habits, and it's not an easy task. We find the routines that work for us and we want to stick with them. And so when something in our life, something in our body is calling for us to change, we have a tendency to kind of dig our heels in and be stubborn, and we don't really want to budge because we really like the routines that we've set. But when it's too monotonous over time, um, we can get into burnout and it's time for change. So even though there's something inside of us that's nagging to rest and to slow down, somehow within our hustle culture, we find ourselves determined to prove something by pushing forward. And there's a time and place for that. But if we take that as a lifestyle, we're inevitably going to burn out in a way that is almost irreparable. It can take 3 months to 5 years to recover from burnout. And if we're honest with ourselves, when those signs start to appear, then we're able to take advantage and to be more preventive in our care. And knowing the signs is actually half the battle of prevention. And when we can take action and prevent that from happening, we're really creating real self care. And that's the actual potent cure for burnout. So I want to go over four main signs when burnout is around the corner, and then we'll talk about four strategies of how to get out of burnout. So the first sign that you might see is procrastination. And this one's a little bit tricky because as creatives, we like to use procrastination as a method when we drive that adrenaline against a deadline and it pushes us to get something done. It's when that procrastination lingers a little too long and it becomes really difficult for us to motivate ourselves to do the things that we need to do. We might look at this as an early sign that burnout is near. The second sign that you're going to see is constant stress. And in some cases, and in some small doses, stress is helpful. It can actually push us to get things done and take action, kind of like that adrenaline rush that I was just talking about. But if it's a constant stress, that's a huge sign to take very seriously. It's the cause of pretty much all illnesses, along with our own mental state, and it needs to be remedied quickly. So pay attention to those signs. The third sign is having a bad vice. Now, we all need to decompress and release pressures from the day, but how we go about it will dictate how healthy we actually are. So I'm not here to judge anyone. We've all had our vices, but it's really a self-evaluation of when that vice is actually a bad habit. And when we use anything to numb ourselves or to avoid what we're feeling, we're really not making a healthy choice in helping to diffuse. And that actually kind of leads to burnout because we're covering up and we're masking what we really should be taking care of. And the fourth sign that I want you to think about is when you're frustrated. Now, we all get frustrated, we all have our kind of moments, but when the levels of frustration and irritability stay around that are almost semi-permanent, it might be time to consider that the environment that you're in is not conducive to what you need and where you need to be. And when everyone around you is starting to feel annoying and they don't get it and they don't get what you're doing or who you are, it's a sign that things aren't working the way that they should be. And you might need to really take a moment to take a step back and look at what's happening in the situation. And so there's other signs that can happen, but these felt like the four main important points and signs that you want to look at and self-assess if burnout is around the corner, especially if you're getting that nudge to relax. Take the time to shift into preventive care. These are just a few key ways to turn this around. And the goal is that when you can identify these signs, then you can break the pattern and the cycles and get back to a healthier way of living and ultimately get back to a better way of creating. So let's go over a few simple strategies to work with so that you can pivot that burnout into a breakthrough. And start with a simple approach so that you can reduce, complicated schedules and you can feel more successful as you're moving forward in life. So the first strategy is to take the right kind of break. And you'll see this a lot in blog articles and things that people talk about this all the time of like, relax and take a break. But while we know rest is really important, it's the type of rest that becomes the game changer. What we want is to be able to rejuvenate and restore our energy back to where it was. Otherwise, if we're still mentally focused on these same frustrations, we didn't accomplish anything. So we want to learn how to effectively check out and replenish that energy. So if you're around devices and social media or whatever that is, constant connection all the time, you have to pull away, and you also have to learn how to mentally shut down. Second strategy to look at is to carve out time for reflection. And these all kind of build on each other. And this one I think is really great. And journaling, I think, is the best way to start off with. And I've given this advice to many people, and it's always really interesting to me who quickly dismisses this. Kind of get the eye roll, kind of like, the journaling. But here's the deal. If you don't have data on yourself and you become a priority, you're going to be lost. You need to know who you really are so that you're giving yourself the right kind of care. Nobody else is going to be able to do this for you. And there may be times when you're going through looking for information and it may not resonate because you don't really know the heart at which the issue is stemming from. So you really want to carve out time to reflect, which kind of goes back into that break. If you're taking the right kinds of breaks, you're able to reflect properly. And then you can assess what matters most to you and then honestly evaluate what pieces need to change in your life. The third strategy, document past wins. So this kind of folds into the moments where we get into our self-doubt and we're not really sure what's going on. And we want to be able to keep a list of things that we've accomplished. And these are small things. They can be large things as well, but the goal is that you can kind of look at how often you're doing these little victories. So these small things, these tiny wins, just reminding yourself of the things that you've actually completed. And it's actually a form of abundant mindset, and a way of gratitude to kind of carve your way out of a dark tunnel to remind yourself of those past victories that you've had. So did you get that job? Did you follow a recipe? Keeping it really simple. You had an idea, you decided to do something, and you finished it. Did you plan a trip somewhere? Did you take care of an animal? The goal is that you're paving a pathway to remind you of the successes of when moments were hard and that you survived them. And this ultimately will cause you to thrive again because you will remember that arc of when things were difficult and how you moved past it to win. Strategy number 4 is just to simply, completely start a new and different hobby. If life is feeling burnt out, you probably are doing the same thing over and over again. So how can you find something completely new and different and hopefully exciting that can re-spark your interest in life? Something that you haven't even completely thought of. So think about what might interest you. What topics do you want to dive into? And if you're not sure, go online, go on YouTube, just start searching around. Go to a local bookstore and wander around until something grabs your attention. It doesn't really matter what it is, it's just something different, something new, something exciting to start to get you out of that mindset, to start to get you out of that feeling. So we don't have to settle for a burnt out life, and we want to be preventive in what we're doing. And if we are able to stay connected and committed to knowing ourselves, then that preventive care is actually a radical act of self-love. I'd love to hear in the comments below how you help diffuse burnout and get this conversation started a little bit more, just to share any tips and tricks. Thank you for joining me. I hope you come back to the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.